Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sheng. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. In recent times, the topic of local government debt in China has sparked extensive discussions on Chinese social media platforms. A few days ago, an individual shared a ranking of local debts from different regions in China, providing insights into the specific debt amounts of each locality and facilitating comparisons. Confirming the validity of this information, official news from China on June 2nd acknowledges the existence of a previously circulated local government debt ranking table. The focal point of the news is the staggering total amount of local government debt in China, reaching 60 trillion yuan. What's concerning is that in the first 5 months of this year, local government debt issuance has already surpassed 3.5 trillion yuan, with a major portion allocated to infrastructure projects. This situation raises comparisons to the past, particularly during the 2008 financial crisis when former Premier Wen Jiabao faced criticism for issuing 4 trillion yuan in debt. Remarkably, in just the initial 5 months of this year, local governments alone have accumulated a debt issuance of 3.5 trillion yuan, while the central government has also significantly contributed to the overall debt burden. Based on First Financial's report, nearly half, 48.5% of the local debt issued in the past 5 months in China were allocated to traditional infrastructure projects, while 15.2% were directed towards affordable housing and the renovation of old houses. The widely discussed list of local government debt balances for 2022 has caused a stir among Chinese internet users. Surprisingly, the cities with the highest debt balances are Wuhan, Guangzhou, and Chengdu, with respective amounts of 630 million yuan, 465 billion yuan, and 464 billion yuan. Equally concerning are the cities with the highest local government debt to fiscal revenue ratio, with Shaoxing leading at a staggering ratio of 1,612%, followed by Fuyang at 1,388% and Harbin at 1,091%. Here are my takeaways. First and foremost, the question of the total amount of local government debt has been shrouded in mystery, with authorities hesitant to acknowledge it. However, there has been a recent release of data. Although its accuracy and true reflection of the scale of local government debt are debatable, nevertheless, it represents a figure approved by the authorities for public knowledge. The staggering 60 trillion yuan of local government debts has caused widespread astonishment, especially considering the significant increase from the 7 trillion yuan reported by the Ministry of Finance at the beginning of Xi Jinping's tenure. This sudden change is undeniably concerning. Nonetheless, it provides us with a long-awaited avenue to comprehend the overall extent of local government debt in China. Another point to consider is that the disclosed total scale of local government debt at 60 trillion yuan is merely a fraction of the actual amount. Local government debt comprises two components: direct debt and debt borrowed through investment platforms. Investment platforms such as urban construction or municipal investment platforms accumulated their own debt, which are supposedly considered a part of the government's liabilities. The financial scale of these platform debts is several times larger than the direct government debt, significantly surpassing the 60 trillion yuan figure. Thirdly, the Chinese Ministry of Finance has established a risk threshold for local government debt, indicating that if the debt to GDP ratio of a local government exceeds 120%, this is considered unsafe or highly risky. However, the majority of local government debts in China currently surpass this threshold. Despite this, the Chinese Communist Party does not appear to be concerned. They believe that accumulating more debt is not a problem, as the central government's debt has also significantly increased, and the local governments are actively taking on more debt. However, this situation is inevitably heading towards a crisis. There is an internationally recognized viewpoint acknowledged by China as well, which states that if a local government needs to allocate 10% of its fiscal revenue to pay interest on its debt, it can be deemed bankrupt. Following this standard, at least 17 Chinese cities are already considered bankrupt. These cities do not generate sufficient fiscal revenue to cover even 10% of their annual interest payments. Nevertheless, the CCP is hesitant to address this issue. Furthermore, the cities with the highest debt balances, namely Wuhan, Guangzhou, and Chengdu, have a common characteristic. These cities heavily rely on land revenue to sustain their finances. However, in the past few years, China's housing prices have started to decline, leading to a weakened real estate market. Consequently, the debt repayment capacity of these cities, heavily reliant on land revenue, has suddenly worsened, and the accumulation of debts has grown larger. Therefore, it is not surprising that these three cities have ended up on the list. Fifthly, in 2019, there was an internal data report within the State Council regarding the total amount of local government debt. Although this report was not made public, it is believed that researchers specializing in macroeconomies may have access to this information. By the end of 2019, the State Council announced that China's total local government debt was 18.39 trillion yuan. Within a span of just 3 years, this debt has increased by 200%. The question arises, where has this significant increase in local government debt been allocated? During this period, a considerable portion of the debt was directed towards epidemic prevention and addressing economic stagnation. However, it remains unclear how exactly the funds were utilized. If we attempt to provide an explanation, it could be attributed to dynamic zero efforts, creating a sort of financial black hole. The precise financial impact of this dynamic zero campaign is challenging to ascertain. Billions of people underwent daily throat swabs, PCR testing, activity surveillance, and frequent vaccinations, incurring significant costs. Nevertheless, one undeniable fact is that in the past 3 years, China's local government debt has tripled, reaching 3 times the debt scale at the end of 2019. This is somewhat perplexing, as it does not align with substantial development projects being undertaken. Furthermore, have you ever wondered why local government debt was treated as a state secret in the past, kept under wraps and surrounded by mystery? The debt of each local government was regarded as highly confidential. So why has there been a sudden shift towards public disclosure? It is noteworthy that this information was not released through the official Xinhua news agency, but rather through certain financial media outlets. Given the Chinese Communist Party's strict control over negative information and their tight regulation of public opinion, it raises questions as to why they would allow the dissemination of such data. Have you ever considered whether this is a normal course of action? Undoubtedly, it is abnormal. In 2021, Premier Li Keqiang issued an internal memorandum within the State Council explicitly prohibiting the modification of publicly announced local government debt data. Once the data is published, it is not supposed to be altered. Li Keqiang's rationale was that frequent revisions would disrupt economic order and undermine financial stability. This directive was issued in 2021. However, the recently revealed data on the scale of local government debt for each region has revised the previously announced 2020 figures. The base amount has been changed from 18.39 trillion yuan to 60 trillion yuan. How did this situation come about? The data that was once concealed and strictly prohibited from disclosure is now being made public. Furthermore, the previous rule prohibiting alterations to published data has been overturned. Considering the politicization of Chinese economic issues, this development becomes easier to comprehend. This suggests that Li Qiang is attempting to shift the blame onto former Premier Li Keqiang. However, Li Qiang lacks the courage to do so directly. It is evident that Xi Jinping either instigated or at least approved of this strategy. As Li Qiang has recently become the premier, it is widely recognized that greater economic risks in China are local government debt and real estate. It is no longer possible to attribute the current 60 trillion yuan debt solely to former Premier Wen Jiabao, who issued 4 trillion yuan in 2008. The responsibility should now fall on Li Keqiang's shoulders. If there are future problems with local government debt, it will not be Xi Jinping's or Li Qiang's fault, but rather Li Keqiang's. Why was the information on local government debt not released through Xinhua News Agency this time? Instead, it was disseminated through financial media and shared on social media. Surprisingly, the Cyberspace Administration of China allowed this information to circulate without deleting posts. Even CCP media participated in the discussions. This clearly indicates an organized and a premeditated form of political propaganda. What effect does this have? Without calm and critical thinking, one's immediate impression may be that Li Keqiang is solely responsible, spending a significant amount of money and causing local government debt to spiral out of control, leading to an imminent explosion. Why did Li Qiang seek to shift blame onto Li Keqiang? The rationale behind this is rather straightforward. Li Qiang likely anticipated an impending crisis related to local government debt. Thus, he took proactive measures in the realm of public opinion to prepare for political scapegoating. His sole objective is self-preservation, as the issue of local government debt can no longer be concealed. When Xi Jinping assumed power, local government debt stood at approximately 7 trillion yuan. Now it has skyrocketed to 70 trillion yuan, accounting for only half of the actual debt. If we consider the remaining portion, China's total local government debt would surpass 160 trillion yuan, surpassing the country's GDP of 120 trillion yuan by a dangerous threshold of over 120%. This poses a significant risk to the entire nation, without even factoring in the central government's debt. The mounting debt burden solely from local governments has placed China's fiscal revenue at a substantial risk. Therefore, behind the peculiar release of local government debt data lies a deceitful and opportunistic political conspiracy to shift the blame onto Li Keqiang. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.